Hello, I'm Becky Holden from the Butte Environmental Council Board of Directors. I want to welcome everybody to tonight's community forum on air quality impacts on vulnerable communities. This is the first forum in our series, the 2022 Sustainable Communities and Environmental Justice Community Forum Series. So thank you for joining. First, a quick overview of Butte Environmental Council, or BEC. We're a nonprofit environmental organization based in Chico, California. We're founded in 1975, and BEC has continued to provide the community with environmental education, information, and advocacy through programs and events. Some of BEC's achievements are made possible by the active support of 900 valued members, staff, and board. On behalf of BEC, I want to thank everybody for attending tonight's virtual forum. Tonight, we're going to hear from 4 local folks about air quality basics, impacts on vulnerable communities and the environment, how to protect yourself and your community. And we'll also hear about Butte Environmental Council's new program, CAPE, the Community Air Protection Education Program. Before each speaker, we're going to have a little poll question pop up to kind of test your base knowledge, and then we'll provide the answers. And once we have the poll questions, we'll go hear from our next speaker or our panelist. After all 4 panelists have spoken, we'll move into our breakout rooms to discuss the topics presented in this forum. We're thinking we'll be having each of the speakers be in one of the breakout rooms, and we'll have some discussion questions that we can have a conversation about and then report back out on towards the end of tonight.
That's me. Thanks, Becky. So just really quick before we launch into the first poll, I also want to initially thank Butte County Air Quality Management District for making this forum possible. So they've been supporting our CAPE program this last year, and we're really grateful for that support. So Jason and your crew, thank you so much for giving Beck the opportunity to do this public outreach and education on air quality in our region. So with that, also, sorry, I'm Caitlin Colby. I'm the Executive Director of Butte Environmental Council. I'm just really excited to launch into Jason's chat. I wasn't planning on popping on very much anyway, so hi everybody. All right, so I'm here on the back end running this Zoom, and so I'm gonna pull up the first poll question and I'm gonna make my face go away. So here we go.
Thanks, Caitlin. So for our first poll question, you can chat in the answer or just have it in your head, and we'll provide the answer in a second. A few seconds. There we go. Yeah, which air quality level? One of these is purple and one is orange. Looks like everybody's weighed in. All right, we'll share the results. Looks like most folks chose level 3, unhealthy for sensitive groups, and that would be the answer that we have as well. So once it gets to level 3, you should consider restricting physical activity. All right, without further ado, our first speaker tonight, Jason Manley, Senior Air Quality Planner at Butte County Air Quality Management District. Thank you, Jason. Jason Manley leads the district's planning, incentives, and outreach efforts. Jason has a background in meteorology, air monitoring, and air pollution compliance. He also loves hiking around Upper Bidwell Park. go ahead and take it away, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction. I got my start in air quality with tribal air quality down with the Morongo Band of Mission Indians in Southern California, part of the South Coast Air Basin. And so there's certainly different air quality challenges down there, but also, very important air quality challenges, not just, of course, people's health, but also part of the culture. And also, a lot of elders, that are out still collecting, still going on hikes to collect basket weaving materials, etc. And so when the ozone values down there were exceptionally high, there was that communication. And as someone just pointed out in the chat, for air quality, sometimes air quality can impact folks differently depending on if they're in a certain population, if they have pre-existing conditions. Perhaps moderate might be the range to start acting to reduce your exposure to certain types of air pollution. But we'll talk more about that later on. This is a brief presentation. I wish I could spend hours talking about air quality because it's very interesting and very important. But with this quick presentation, I'll go over different air quality agencies, what we do, Butte County Air Quality Management District programs, what do we do here at the Air Quality District, and what we don't do. We'll go into a little bit more detail on our burn program, and then also some of the outreach efforts we do, and also some grants and incentives that we've been doing over the past few years that have been really making a difference with improving air quality and reducing exposure to different air pollutants. Next, please. So we have several monitoring locations throughout Butte County, and this is ever expanding. I'll show you a graphic later on with air quality sensors. A lot of you may be familiar with purple air sensors. This map is getting filled in. These are the official monitoring stations. The thing about these is that they are they're very accurate, but they're also very expensive, and there's only 4 of them in an entire county. Only 2 of them are measuring ozone. And these new sensors I'll talk about later on, it's really democratizing air quality. It's bringing citizen science to air quality, and it's been really important over the past few years. And it'll be important moving forward too. Next slide. So just really briefly, the US EPA, they of course they're guided by the Clean Air Act. They work at the federal level, and they do a lot of various things. Starting on the bottom left, they set standards for different types of industries, different types of toxics. They have the ozone and acid rain programs. Those are, ozone was more of an issue back in the 80s and 90s. Still something to be, to watch. And acid rain is more of an industrial area, more of the East Coast kind of issue, but still something very important. They set engine standards for trains, for vehicles, and also for airplanes. They're the only ones who regulate trains. They're the only ones who regulate airplanes. And also they regulate vehicles. They're one of the only ones to regulate vehicles. The only other entity to do that in the United States is the state of California. And on the upper right, establishing the NAAQS, the NAAQS, those are the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And that really guides much of the efforts that we do. We have to meet these air quality standards. And if we don't, we have to create plans, we have to create new regulations, do more incentives to get us towards meeting these air quality standards. Next, please. The California Air Resources Board, they're the state air quality agency, and they're out of Sacramento, California. And they also have a huge array of different things that they do. Starting at the bottom left there, air toxic control measures. This is probably most felt by people that have trucks. The truck regulations, heavy duty engine regulations. That is really one thing the California Air Resources Board has been focusing on over the past 20 or so years is diesel particulate matter. Emergency response, they've helped us out many times during wildfires with extra monitoring capabilities. So we're thankful for that. Grants and incentives, a lot of the grants that we do funnel down through the California Air Resources Board. And they also have their own set of vehicle standards and engine standards, which is very unique around the United States because California started doing it first because they formed before the US EPA, implemented by Ronald Reagan, actually. They also submit plans to the EPA. California has their own air quality standards, which we also need to meet, and various other programs. For greenhouse gas, some of you probably understand AB32 and SB32, which are the greenhouse gas goals, and then the cap and trade program. Next. And then there are various air districts all around the state. Not every state in the country has air districts. Sometimes all of air quality for the entire state is run out of just one Department of Environmental Quality. But California is so diverse, so many different topographies, populations. It's broken up into these different air districts. Some are multi-county, like San Joaquin Valley, Bay Area, but we are just the boundaries of Butte County. We're not part of the Butte County government. We're a special district, but our jurisdiction is Butte County. Next. So what do we do? So like I mentioned before, our guiding light for the most part is to meet air quality standards, and of course avoid pollution exposure for a variety of different air pollutants. We have to do emission inventories to see where these emissions are coming from industry, from vehicles, from land use projects. We try to inventory where the emissions are coming from so that we know how to plan. We have plans to attain the air quality standards, encourage smart growth by being a commenting agency on environmental projects through the CEQA process. We do compliance assistance, and we do also have enforcement. We have rules and regulations, and we can enforce them by issuing citations if we need to. We have a variety of prohibitory rules to prevent exposure of air pollution to many populations, and that includes fugitive dust rules, open burning rules, public nuisance, visible emissions, even regulations for certain types of coatings to control the volatile organic compounds, which help the ozone, the summer smog problem that we have sometimes in the valley. Next. We also have permits for many stationary sources. If it's bolted to the ground and it releases air pollution, then that is something that we do have control over. And this includes boilers, engines, wood manufacturing products, a lot of the ag sector, like the almond processing plants, rice dryers, etc., dry cleaners, gas stations. If you've ever used, if you've ever gone to the gas station and you use that big heavy nozzle to fill up your tank, that's an air pollution control device, and that's something that we inspect. Next. We also take a look at air toxic contaminants. Whenever large industry goes in, there is a screening process that takes place. We have an engineer on hand that does evaluate the emissions of any sort of new type of source. And so there's a variety of different modeling that can go on, health risk analysis, and also there's regulations, as I mentioned before, to regulate some of the diesel emitters from portable equipment. Next. Our open burning program is pretty robust. There is quite a bit of open burning demand in Butte County, and there's a very robust program to manage that burning. And we work pretty closely with our neighboring air districts. So that's the Feather River Air District south of us, Colusa County, Glenn County, Tehama County. We're all part of the Sacramento Valley air basin. And so we have a smoke management plan that we all participate in, along with the California Air Resources Board. And they have meteorologists on staff too to help us out to implement the management of these various burning programs. I'll go into more detail on each of these on the next slides. So for prescribed burning, and this is something that has been, of course, in the news as being needed more and more going into the future, we have a program to allow for prescribed burning. There are requirements to get a permit and for prescribed burning, and the requirements are listed right here. We also have all of these requirements on our website, and I have a link to our website at the end of this presentation. So I hope it's pretty easy to find all of these fact sheets and all of the information about who needs a permit once you get to our website. And if you have any questions, my email is also at the end of the presentation. There is a process where we work with land managers, CAL FIRE, the Forest Service, and even some of the wildlife management folks to put all of the prescribed burns on a map. We have a system called PFERS, And we want to make sure that we know what burning is going on, because as you all know, smoke doesn't stop at the border of the county. So we really need to work with one another and work with our neighbors too, to make sure that we're not creating excess smoke. Next, please. Agricultural burning. There is agricultural burning in Butte County. A burn permit is required, and there are limitations on when and what you can burn. On that burn permit, you can only burn on a permissive burn day if air quality is poor, if wind is a concern, if we have requests from CAL FIRE for no burning for fire risk purposes, we'll call it a no burn day, and any burning on a no burn day is enforced. We can issue tickets for that. Burn hours are also important. 8:45 a.m. to 1 hour before sunset, because burning at nighttime, it just doesn't work. It'll smoke out neighbors very easily, and oftentimes in the Sacramento Valley, we're under strong inversions. So if any burning goes on, especially larger agricultural burns at nighttime, that smoke is not going to lift up and go away. So that's, if you see burning at night, that's likely not something that's allowable. There's also drying times. If you burn anything that's wet, it's going to be more smoky. Also natural vegetation only, and only burned on the property where it was grown. Next, please. And then we also have regulations for outdoor residential and fire hazard burning. These regulations are actually kind of new. These started in 2011. Prior to that, it was kind of, from what I hear, this is before I was here, but it was kind of the Wild West with folks burning in their backyards. There is certainly a need in some areas for cleaning up their properties, especially up in the foothills, but we needed to manage it so that smoke was minimized. One of the ways that we manage it is also setting burn hours, similar to ag burning, 8:45 to 1 hour before sunset. On some occasions, especially during the dry season, folks that want to burn in their backyard do need a burn permit, not from us, but from their local fire agency. And we have some of the same requirements as ag burning, and additional requirements for burning on lots less than 1 acre in size. So moving the pile away from the nearest neighbor's house, no burning of poison oak. I've gotten poison sumac in the face before. It was not great. Next slide. So after our burn program, we also have a we have a public outreach program. That air quality index table that you see there on the right side, that's a document that we made with the Butte County Office of Education and the Butte County Public Health, and we sent this around to all the different school districts here in Butte County, offering some guidance for mainly during episodes of wildfire. You know, at what AQI level how should you react with your students? Because students can be pretty sensitive receptors when it comes to poor air quality. So we offer guidance for that. We also have our Check Before You Light program, where if we expect poor air quality conditions in the wintertime, we'll ask folks to voluntarily refrain from burning in their fireplace or wood stove. Our program is voluntary, but it is mandatory within the city limits of Chico due to their city ordinance. After that.
Hi, Jason, it's Becky. I just want to let you know we just have about 4 more minutes.
Perfect. We do take a look at the air quality every single day, and oftentimes multiple times during the day to keep an eye on things. We have a 24-hour average forecast. It's an outlook. It's on our website every single day and updated every day. We also have links to current air quality, and these links update at least once an hour. And if you go to the air quality sensors pages like Purple Air, they can update at once every half hour, sometimes instantaneous. Next. Wildfire response. Unfortunately, we've had to spend a lot of time and resources responding to wildfires over the past few years. It's been as anyone who lives around here knows, we've experienced multiple days of hazardous air quality throughout the past few years. We have portable air quality monitoring stations. You see one of our staff setting up. We call it the EBAM, but that is it's a fairly rigorous piece of particulate monitoring. It transmits out on a satellite, and it'll show up on the Air Now Fire and Smoke map, which I'll show you on the next page. We also have a good deployment of Purple Air sensors. Actually, if you go to the next page, This is the Air Now Fire and Smoke Map, and we have a link to this on our website, as well as the last page of our website. This is fairly new, and those little squares that you see here are also fairly new. These sensors give a great estimate of air quality conditions throughout Butte County, and we've been placing these in areas like Thermalito, Butte Meadows, Chapman, Palermo, and so now areas that have never historically received any sort of air quality monitoring folks can check the air quality, or at least get a good idea of what the air quality is. So that's something that's really positive. Next. Grants and incentives. We've been doing many grants over the past few years. Ag pumps, close to 100 ag tractors, helping out the farming community turn over their older diesel equipment. Also, over 500 wood stoves have been changed out to either natural gas, EPA certified wood stove, pellet, or even electric throughout Butte County, and that's done a lot to help our wintertime air quality. Next. And then the Community Air Protection Program, which is kind of what we're starting here, or we're participating with right here. Over the past few years, we have helped fund electric school buses for several of the school districts and supported some smaller projects throughout the county, such as the CAPE program, which Beck will talk about later, supporting Chico Velo, some of their initiatives, some fire hazard reduction projects with the Resource Conservation District, with the Fire Safe Council, Magalia Community Park. Next. And my last little bit is I'm going to go way more in depth on our community air protection program, as well as spending more time getting ideas for what are still our air quality concerns and what are some of our priorities for grant funding moving into the future. This meeting is next Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. It's going to be a Zoom meeting. I have all the information on our website, but on that meeting, I'm going to go more into detail about our success stories from the Community Air Protection Program, talk about where are our disadvantaged communities as far as AB 617, and what are some of the projects that we can fund. So if you're interested in that, I'm happy for you to join me there. Next. And thank you very much. Here I have a list of a couple websites to help you out. Our main website, which is bcaqmd.org or butteairquality.com. We have a lot of information on that website about current air quality, about historical air quality, our governing board schedule. We do have a governing board made up of the 5 county supervisors and representatives from each of the 5 cities. They meet every month. So if there's any pressing air quality concerns, that's another forum for the public to get engaged. Did I talk fast enough?
Yes, you did. Awesome. Thank you very much, Jason. I will spend much more time on the website. I love all the information you provided, and I'm glad to know that we can come to a talk you're doing later. So we'll make sure that we have that up on our Facebook for folks to find as well. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
For anybody that has questions, we're going to be in breakout rooms. We'll be able to ask questions. So please either add them to the chat when when one comes to mind, or save them for the breakout room. All right. So before we get to our next panelist, we have a second poll question to kind of test your base knowledge. What makes up over half of the emissions in the city of Chico? Is it electricity, transportation, waste, or natural gas? So we'll have that pop up and see what we think. All right, it looks like most folks picked transportation, but natural gas and electricity had some folks too. Yeah, we have it as transportation would be the source of over half of the emissions in the city of Chico, vehicle miles traveled, commercial and residential cars that just put out a lot of emissions. The transportation sector would include also the businesses related to fuel. All right, so with that,
Real
next
quick,
I saw
Becky.
Jason chatted asking what kind of emissions.
oh, good job. Thank you
quizzing us
for
now.
specifying. We were looking at gas or air emissions, obviously carbon dioxide, I think, and greenhouse gas. That's the word I was trying to think of. Greenhouse gas emissions. Good question. Caitlin, go ahead.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. It was Jason that mentioned that. So I didn't know if Jason had some input on, you know, a better way to have asked this question to get what we were looking for specifically.
Yes. Well, it looks like we got transportation. And you won't be graded on these poll questions. It was just a way to kind of get you in the frame of mind. So with that, kind of speaking along different types of transportation, our next presenter is Ashley Kohler. Ashley Kohler is the Sustainability Program Manager for Sierra Nevada Brewing Company here in Chico. She is focused on developing, implementing, and managing initiatives that further integrate sustainability into Sierra Nevada's culture and operations. Outside of the brewery, Ashley sits on the board of Chico Velo, our local biking nonprofit, and is a climate action commissioner for the city of Chico. Through collaboration and education, Ashley is dedicated to lowering Butte County's environmental footprint. Thank you, Ashley, for speaking tonight. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. And Jason, thank you so much for your presentation. I took some notes and I hope everyone else did as well. Again, my name is Ashley Kohler, and tonight I'm going to be talking on behalf of the three organizations Becky just talked about. First, I'm going to present some data from the Climate Action Commission, and then I'll speak on ways that Sierra Nevada is working to reduce emissions and how Chico Velo is advocating for active transportation. Next slide. So how do cities contribute to climate change? Well, the four main sources of greenhouse gases in a city come from buildings, transportation, waste, and water. And on the slide are some examples of emission sources for each of these categories, but I want to talk specifically to Chico emissions. So if you want to go to the next slide. In 2017, as you can see, 5% of our city's emissions came from waste, roughly 34% came from energy sources and fall into that building category, and 61% come from transportation, so that whole question. 61% come from transportation, so gas and diesel purchases. Here in Chico, that means our largest opportunity to reduce emissions and therefore reduce air quality concerns is to, 1, become more energy efficient, and 2, to transition to alternative forms of transportation. So I'm going to talk about a few ways that Sierra Nevada is doing this, as well as Chico Velo, and I'm going to start with Sierra Nevada. So we can go to the next slide. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Sierra Nevada, but I wanted to start with a quick introduction for those of you that aren't familiar. So next slide. The brewery was founded in 1980 by Ken Grossman and named after the Sierra Nevada mountains, where Ken spent his time hiking, climbing, and of course, biking. He's an outdoor enthusiast and an environmentalist at heart, and built the company with those principles and values in mind. So resourcefulness, efficiency, innovation, zero waste, and just doing the right thing are the core of who Ken is and how our company operates. Being a private family-run company is also important for sustainability because it means that core values guide decision-making instead of shareholders and investors. So if you want to go to the next slide. So over the years, we've worked really hard to implement a variety of projects that reduce emissions, and we're constantly looking for new ways to close the loop and bring material back into production loops. So I'm going to go through a few examples of the things that we've done. So one great example of a closed loop system is our on-site composting program. So if you want to click to the next image, should pop up. Yeah, so all of the waste that we generate in our tap rooms and break rooms are collected and processed into compost on site using our hot rot. If you click to the next slide. So that's our break room waste. One more. And this is our hot rot. So this is the composting machine that we use to make our compost. Compost is then applied to our fields. So I think one more. And then, so two clicks and then it'll get the full circle. Hopefully, yeah, there we go. So then that compost is applied to our fields. Our fields are then planted with veggies and used in the tap rooms or given to employees, and starts the whole process over again. So composting is a really great way to avoid methane emissions from landfill. It also significantly reduces our food miles and allows us to offer really high quality food to our tap room guests. And so it's a really great program that we're really excited to be able to have on site. And we even take compost from our employees. So they're able to bring it in from home and put it into our compost bins that are located throughout the break rooms and in the tap room. And so composting is a really great way, is a really great closed loop system that reduces methane and transportation emissions. It's also something that can be easily implemented at home. So in your own backyard. So instead of using a hot rod though, you can start a compost pile or start a worm bin or get some chickens. So composting is something that businesses and community members can do to reduce emissions and air quality concerns. So another great closed loop system that I want to talk about is our wastewater treatment facility. So Sierra Nevada has been committed to water reduction and conservation for over 40 years. We've invested in automation, training, recovery projects to reduce water use on site. And one of those projects was our wastewater facility. In 2002, we began to pre-treat our water on site and have the ability to process about 200,000 gallons of water every day. This wastewater plant utilizes anaerobic digestion to treat the water, and anaerobic digestion is a process in which anaerobic bacteria consume organic materials present in wastewater. So this project and this program really have two great benefits. First, we're able to reduce our impact on the city's water treatment plant. And second, we're able to generate biogas. You might be thinking, biogas, that's not great for air quality. But at the brewery, we're actually able to capture that gas and use it at our facility. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll kind of walk through how that process works. So how it works is first we have our brewing waste, which is then sent to our water treatment facility. If you click, it should take you to the next image. This facility has specialized equipment that creates and captures biogas. Biogas is cleaned, cleaned and sent to our boilers to offset the need for natural gas purchases. So one more will take you to the beautiful picture of our natural gas or our boilers. And just fun fact, because the image is up there, but in Mills River, we actually use our biogas to create electricity using microturbines. But in Chico, we use the natural gas to power our boilers. And so generally about 10 to 20% of the gas that we use in our boilers come from our anaerobic digesters. So this helps us reduce our emissions. It requires us to purchase less natural gas, and therefore less gas is piped to our location. And this is just one way that we reduce our building emissions. Another way that we are reducing our impact, the impact of our buildings, is by focusing on energy efficiency. So energy efficiency is really important at the brewery. We have all these great technologies, some of which I just touched on, but we've got solar, biogas, boilers. But what's the point of having all these really great technologies that work together if we're going to be wasteful with how we use our energy? So at the brewery, we focus on ways to increase efficiency instead of just, increasing something like solar panels on our rooftops. We do also prioritize solar panels, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. So we spend a lot of time thinking about energy and how to use energy wisely. So as we just talked about, closed loop systems are really great ways to reduce emissions. They're also really great ways to increase efficiency. So on top of capturing biogas, we also have a lot of really great closed loop systems that revolve around thermal heat recovery systems. So We capture heat that comes off of our fermentation tanks, our microturbines and air compressors, and then we move this heat and use it in different parts of the brewing process. Additionally, we also have the largest solar array in the craft industry, and that generates about 20% of our on-site energy needs. So focusing on energy efficiency and closed loop systems reduce our demand on the grid. It means we need to purchase less. Less electricity. We also need to purchase less natural gas, and therefore it reduces our overall energy consumption and our impact. Many of you on the call might not have the opportunity to recover heat or maybe make your own biogas, but there are lots of different things that you can do to reduce your consumption and your footprint. And so some of the things that I like to suggest is purchasing energy efficiency appliances. This one I think is becoming more common for people to think about, but using energy outside of peak hours is really key, especially during summer months. And you can also insulate your home, so you reduce your need for heating and cooling. And so all of these things are really great at reducing emissions. They're also really good at reducing costs. So something you can look into, tons of websites out there you can look into energy efficiency suggestions for your home. And now, certainly, last but not least, we've got transportation. So transportation is something that's huge at the brewery. We have and we continue to work on reducing our transportation footprint because transportation is crucial, you know, from receiving ingredients to getting our beers on shelves. We recognize that the impact we have on the environment and air quality. So we do as much as we can to reduce that footprint. And so one great example of this is our rail spur. So that's the image on the far left. It's not very glamorous. You can see a truck and a rail car, and this is our rail spur. And so the reason we have a rail spur is because most of our barley comes from Canada and the Midwest, and transporting malted barley would require thousands and thousands of trucks each year. And instead, we purchased a property just a few miles away from our brewery, and we're able to fill, so one rail car can hold 3 to 4 truckloads of barley. And so this greatly reduces the fuel needed to get our barley to our brewery, reduces emissions, and it also reduces the packaging that would be generated if we were sending this material by truck. Another thing that we do, so the top middle section, that photo, is our used cooking oil. We use it to make biodiesel. So this process reduces waste. It also creates an alternative fuel source. The bottom corner, RIDE. RIDE is an employee commuting program that we have, and RIDE stands for Reduce Individual Driver Emissions. And we pay employees $2 a day to use alternative transportation. So things like walking, biking, public transportation. I think some people even ride their skateboards or scootering, so anything like that counts. And it's been a really successful program. We've got a lot of employees riding into work. And lastly, another exciting thing that we have on site is electric vehicles and electric charging stations. And as Jason talked about in his presentation, there's a lot of really great funding available right now for electric vehicles and electric charging infrastructure. So we're currently investigating if, you know, new technologies such as electric long haul trucks or an ag tractor might be a good fit for our operation. And so we're hoping to look into that technology and hopefully be able to implement it sometime in the future. So that is it for the brewery section of my presentation. Next, I'm going to dive into what we're doing at Chico Velo. So again, I sit on the board of Chico Velo, and so I've been a part of the board for 3 years now. And Chico Velo's mission is to promote bicycling for transportation, recreation, and health through public education, advocacy, and community stewardship. So currently, if you want to go to the next slide. So bikes make up just 6% of the miles traveled in world cities. If by 2050, bikes made up 14% of world travel, there would be an overall 11% reduction in carbon emissions. So that's huge. So biking not only improves, your health and maybe your mental well-being, it also improves air quality by reducing emissions. And at Chico Velo, we're working closely with the city and local organizations to help increase safe, convenient biking and pedestrian infrastructure, and are working to prioritize active transportation just overall. And so one way that we're able to do this is by offering bike valet at various events. So if you want to go to the next slide. You may have seen us in the past. We're typically at the Thursday night markets during the summer, and in the warmer months, we're at the Saturday market. We'll be back in March for anyone on the call that's excited to start riding your bike to the market again and get it parked by our bike valet. And the bike valet is, again, a great example of helping to provide that safe and low stress way for people to ride their bikes by providing parking for them. And it's also a really great way for us to educate on all the different improvements that we're helping with at the city level and things we're advocating for when it comes to infrastructure in our area. And we also like to help people find bike paths. If you are not very familiar with the bike paths in Chico, I highly recommend talking to somebody at Bike Valet. They'll either be able to give you great tips or provide you with a map so you can kind of make your own way throughout the city on our great network of bike paths. Talking about bike paths, we also work to keep our bike paths clean. And so we do this with a program called Adopt a Path. So if you want to go to the next slide. Our Adopt a Path program might not directly impact air quality, but it does help reduce pollution that's on the bike paths. And it also makes these paths feel more welcoming. And so by doing that, we're helping to, hopefully helping to get more people excited about biking and helping to increase active travel rather than vehicle travel. And so this program has been really successful so far. It's relatively new, and we're hoping to expand and offer more adoptable paths in the future to make sure that all the paths in Chico are clean and welcoming to people that want to use bicycling as transportation in town. Next is our TrailWorks program. So TrailWorks actively supports the creation and maintenance of sustainable and enjoyable trails in our region. We have a strong partnership with the city of Chico to maintain the trails in Upper Park and Lower Park. And we've done some additional work in the Oroville area. So it's a really great program, something that we're really proud of. And by keeping these trails in good repair, we're able to help support local trail infrastructure, and we're able to encourage people to use our local trails. So by having these high quality trails in our backyard, people don't need to drive hours away to access great trails. Don't need to go up to Tahoe every weekend. You can just leave your house on your bicycle, get to Upper Park and have some really great trails. So this reduces the miles needed to travel for trails. And this is one reason that we are absolutely thrilled and so excited about our newest bike project in Colby Mountain. So Colby Mountain, if you want to go to the next slide, is a collaboration that will create over 40 miles of new single track trails, welcoming a new chapter of sustainable outdoor recreation in Jonesville, one that invests in community stewardship and is working to protect the natural beauty of the region. This project really aims to rebuild the rural communities. So this project, the Colby Mountain Project, is part of a larger La Sierra project, which is located up in the Sierra Mountains. And so this overarching project aims to rebuild rural communities that have been impacted and continue to be impacted by the 2018 Camp Fire. And so they're hoping to bring back money into these areas through this recreational tourism. So the Colby Mountain Recreation Project will eventually form the northernmost section of the 300-mile La Sierra route, which will connect 14 different mountain communities across the region and establish a Trans-Sierra Trail. Really exciting stuff, something that we're just thrilled to be able to work in collaboration with a lot of organizations on, kind of see some of the organizations that we've partnered with to make this project possible. And this relates to air quality again, because these trails are part of our local community. If you were to say just swap one big road trip and a 3,000-mile flight, you know, packing your bike in and go into Arizona for a week or cross the country to ride your bike, you can save up to 1 ton of CO2 by just biking locally. So it's what I recommend: bike locally, enjoy these mountains, these trails, and support this great project. All right, next. We have a variety of educational programs for kids to adults to help encourage people to use bike pedals instead of gas pedals for daily transportation. So to learn more about the educational opportunities, please visit our website. You'll also find more information on how to get involved with our organization and volunteer. You know, and you can also find information on how to support us. We are a volunteer nonprofit and every dollar counts. So if you want to, you can go onto our website, sign up to volunteer, you know, donate to us. But what I highly recommend is to attend our literal fundraiser, which is our 2022 Wildfire. It's the first year that we've been able to host this event in over 2 years. It's going to be one of our biggest events ever, and it's again our biggest fundraiser of the year. So highly recommend checking out our website and some of these different programs that we support and participating in our biggest fundraiser of the year. And last but not least, I just want to call out that a win for climate is a win for health. So Project Drawdown and the University of Minnesota identified 80 climate solutions that also bring about improvements to human health. The health benefits of a low carbon society are more substantial and numerous than previously realized. Things like creating more green spaces, planting more trees, improving our communities' walkability and active transportation access not only reduce emissions and air quality concerns, they also improve people's health and people's quality of life. So thank you. And if you go to the next slide, these are the 2 places to email me at if you have any other questions or would like to get involved in some way. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you very much. Great job. It's really good to hear about what positive ways Sierra Nevada has solved their kind of inherent problems of businesses causing or having an appetite for resources. And I love that I live in Chico and can point to Sierra Nevada. And it's really great to hear so much about what Chico Vela is doing, especially with the Colby Mountain. So thank you so much. We're gonna scoot right along here. We did have another poll question, and we're gonna kind of keep it short so that we can get to our next presenter. This next one is air pollution contributing to the causes of death. So is it lung cancer, stroke, heart disease, or lung disease that air pollution is going to be contributing? So get your answers in. Just all right. I'm seeing kind of a preview of what folks are saying, and it looks like, yep, we all kind of know it. Got a few more people. Lung disease, yeah, that would be what is associated with air pollution. So thank you. All right, you guys, I'm excited to present Lacy Moore. She is our next panelist. She is on the board of directors with me at Butte Environmental Council. Lacy holds a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science, Applied Ecology from Chico State. She is the sustainability specialist for Lundberg Family Farms. Lacy's passion is educating the community about environmental issues and the impact every person can have to better our world. Thank you, Lacy. I can't hear you if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I'm Lacy Moore, and I'll be walking you through air pollution processes, some impacts on human health as well as environmental health, and what we should do about it. So first, I want to walk you through how air pollution comes to be a problem. So we start with natural or anthropogenic sources emitting different pollutants. And once they're in the atmosphere, these pollutants chemically react in the air and transform into different compounds sometimes. Some of these compounds react to sunlight, generally causing a chemical reaction to make ozone. Pollutant transport can be affected by things like weather and further affect air quality. Hot temperatures might trap air pollutants closer to the ground, for example. And different pollutants cause different human health and environmental health effects, as we will get into shortly. Next slide. Air pollution is considered the invisible killer. No level of air pollution is safe to breathe, and anyone can be at risk from its harmful effects. While it's correct to assume that there are very high concentrations of pollutants when it's visibly hazy, there can be harmful air pollution that is still present when the sky is blue. And according to the World Health Organization, air pollution is responsible for 29% of the deaths by lung cancer, 24% of the deaths from stroke, 25% from heart disease, and 43% from lung disease. Next slide. Pollutants have different impacts on your health depending on what they are, but in summary, pollutants can cause issues in all parts of your body, even in a very short term. You've probably noticed that when you're around ag fields or when the air is smoky, you might get a headache or a sore throat or cough or have skin irritation. Over time, these symptoms can become long-term. Air pollution can affect your central nervous system, cause cardiovascular, respiratory diseases, impact all of your organs, your blood, and your reproductive system. Emerging research from the American Lung Association has actually found that exposure to even small amounts of air pollution over the long term can make someone 8% more likely to pass away from COVID, for current context. Next slide. And there are many sensitive groups in vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. So some of these sensitive groups include elderly, children and infants, pregnant women, people with pre-existing conditions like diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, and asthma, those who work outdoors, and economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. A higher level of air pollution and a greater sensitivity to the impacts in disadvantaged neighborhoods. And studies show that your likelihood of living in a polluted area is higher if you are a person of color, indigenous, or with lower income. And on top of all of this, the lives lost and disproportionate health burden from air pollution results in an economic burden too. These people in these communities face more days of missed school and missed work, as well as the additional financial strain of medical costs associated with more hospitalizations and trips to the emergency room. Next slide. So now I want to dive into some of the heaviest hitters with air pollution, first of which is particulate matter, or PM. So particulate matter is a mixture of extremely small particles and liquid droplets in the air. These are emitted directly or from a chemical reaction in the air. Many enter directly from power plants, factories, vehicles, dirt roads, wood burning, or agriculture. And you can see how tiny these particles are. The PM10, that means that it's 10 microns in diameter. That's about a fifth the size of a human hair. And the PM 2.5 is about a quarter size of the 10 micron. Next slide. Particulate matter pollution can strongly affect our lungs and our heart, triggering asthma attacks, heart attacks, and other health problems. And it hurts the environment too. So particulate matter can acidify lakes and streams, can change the nutrient balance in coastal waters and large river basins. It can deplete the nutrients in soil, damage sensitive forests and farm crops, affect the diversity of ecosystems, and contribute to acid rain, and can also stain and damage stone and other infrastructure. Next slide. And since I mentioned acid rain, I'll walk you through what that is. Pollutants like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide and their particulate matter derivatives like sulfates and nitrates react in the atmosphere with water and oxygen. And so this makes sulfuric acid and nitric acid. And when it rains, these compounds are carried down through the atmosphere. And this can react with things like paint, building materials, statues, and of course, the heaviest impact is in our aquatic ecosystems. Next slide. Another heavy hitter is ground level ozone, also called photochemical smog. Smog forms when air pollutants chemically react in the air in the presence of heat and sunlight. This isn't a direct emission, but rather a secondary chemical pollutant from those nitrous oxides and from volatile organic compounds. And all of these reactions form ground level ozone, which is this haze that you see on the right here. Next slide. And I want to be sure to make the distinction between protective ozone, like our ozone layer, and dangerous ozone or ground level ozone. So the ozone that exists within the troposphere and the air that we breathe is what we consider bad ozone or ground level ozone. Ground level ozone can reduce lung function by up to 20% and can trigger health reactions immediately for those who are sensitive. It can also damage vegetation and ecosystems by inhibiting the ability of plants to open the microscopic pores on their leaves to breathe. It also interferes with photosynthesis by reducing the amount of carbon dioxide the plants can process and release as oxygen. It can also lead to reduced agriculture crops and commercial forest yields, reduced growth and survivability of tree seedlings, and increased susceptibility to diseases, pests, and other stressors like harsh weather. Next slide. So now, after learning all of that really sad stuff, what can we do about it? One thing is to formulate, execute, and enforce health and environmental laws and policies to address all of these factors contributing to the disproportionate levels of exposure across communities. We can clean up all the sources of air pollution in communities and reduce the exposures. And as our nation transitions to cleaner sources of electricity, disproportionately burdened communities should be prioritized for cleanup in the area. We should advocate for regular and thorough assessments of the impacts of air pollution in communities near sources of dangerous air pollutants like highways, ports, boilers, power plants. We should aggressively target these pollution sources for cleanup and reduce the disproportionate health burdens borne by economically disadvantaged and politically disenfranchised communities. So you should all contact your representatives, do some more research about your local air quality and stay on top of it, and check the air quality when you make plans to go in new areas or want to do some kind of physical activity outside, and make sure to share that information with other people, share the resources you get from the other speakers here as well, so that we can all make sure we're doing the best that we can to keep ourselves healthy and also keep our earth healthy. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Lacy. Great job. Yes, we will have more interesting discussions in the breakout rooms at the end. We have another poll question, and then we're going to get to our last panelist. Poll question number 4 of these 4 multiple choice: which is not something that would help to reduce air pollution? Mowing like your lawn in the evening, fueling up like your vehicle in the morning, using less energy overall, or choosing a low pollution or a low emission vehicle? Mowing your lawn in the evening, fueling your vehicle in the morning, using less energy, or choosing a low emission vehicle. What is something that's not going to help reduce air pollution? All right, so it looks like we had you. So actually fueling up in the morning doesn't make any difference to air pollution if you're gonna get fuel morning, noon, or night, but mowing your yard in the different times of day will affect pollution. Using less energy will, and so will choosing a low emission vehicle. Okay. It's interesting. Thank you. Our next speaker, our last panelist, is Juliette Liu. She's BEC's Education and Outreach Coordinator. Juliette is a recent graduate from UC Berkeley with a bachelor's in Conservation and Resource Studies, a concentration in environmental policy, and a minor in food systems. She's particularly interested in wildlife conservation and is soon attending law school to become an environmental lawyer. As a Chico native, she is passionate about educating the local community about environmental issues and protecting its natural resources. Please welcome Juliette.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet everyone. Next slide. That's just the about me. Let's continue today. I'm going to be talking about several topics, but first I'm going to be mentioning how important it is and how to monitor and predict air quality. So first of all, we've already heard so much about how important it is. And oftentimes a lot of people tend to assume that monitoring air quality is only for scientists who have special fancy tools. But it's been brought up a couple times. If you move to the next slide, there are these super cool things called purple airs, and it's a way of gathering citizen science. And through these devices, you're able to sample the air yourself and to see what air quality would be like that day. If you go to the next slide. Some primary ways to protect yourself. I'm sure that we all have had experiences with the campfire going on a few years ago where air quality was especially bad. But just to review, we have some information here. So first of all, when air quality is poor, we can adjust our physical activity outside so that you don't breathe in too much air pollution. You can do physical activities inside. You can change it to something a little less intense, or you can shorten the amount of time that you're physically active. And also, if you have asthma, make sure you have your inhaler with you at all times. Next slide. So here is airnow.gov. It's a way that is easily accessible for people to check about how air quality is that day. You can just enter your zip code and it will show you. We have various colors that show how good or bad the air quality would be for that day. If you could actually click on that link, it can show you what Chico has for today. So it looks like currently we are at 33, which is in the green zone and very good, just very good to know. If we can go to the next slide as well. Thank you. And then there are many ways that you can reduce your impact. First of all, we can conserve energy at home, at work, everywhere we go. We can use public transportation as much as possible, carpooling, biking, or walking. We can make sure to follow gasoline refueling instructions and be careful not to spill fuel. Always tighten your gas cap in your car. We can consider using gas logs instead of wood. We can purchase portable gasoline containers that are spill-proof when available, so that way it doesn't leak. We can keep cars, boats, and other engines tuned. We can make sure the tires are properly inflated. We can use environmentally safe paints and mulch or use compost leaves and yard waste. So here we have another infographic that it shows refueling in the evening could help, which at gas stations, gasoline vapors actually get up into the air, and that makes the ozone tougher on the hot and sunny days. Mowing in the evening could actually prevent ozone formation as well. A lot of these things, like we said, we can promote the use of renewable energy, and we could choose low VOC products. Finally, I'm going to be talking about the CAPE program that Butte Environmental Council has. This has been a program that has been very dear to my heart as recently. If you can go to the next slide. So what it is that we educate Butte County residents of all ages about the impact that air quality has on environmental and human health. We also talk about the human impact of what causes this air quality. So we hope to empower participants with the knowledge of why it's important that we have healthy air and how we can head towards a more sustainable future. Many of these have taken place as workshops, and they're super fun. I've gotten the chance to drive to elementary schools, middle schools, all over the county, just to lead workshops. They align with California EEI standards, and you know, it really goes for all ages, from kindergarten to 12th grade, and for adults as well. So in the CAPE workshops, we primarily talk about what the Earth's air is composed of. We talk about common sources of air pollution, different types of air pollutants, and then actions that we can take to protect our own health and our environment. So these CAPE workshops also include, in addition to the presentation, we have demonstrations that introduce science and complicated topics to young minds. And we have fun activities, crafts, take-home materials, so that way they can, so that children are able to speak with their parents about these important conversations as well. All of these materials for the workshops are free of charge, and it's just a really, really great way that we've been able to convey these important issues to members of our community. And that's all for me today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliet. That's great. And we're really excited to have you with BEC now, so that we can do our community air protection program. It's wonderful. And that means that we have gone through our 4 panelists, and the next part of our forum tonight is the breakout. So we're going to have one of our panelists in each of the breakout rooms, and our incredible speakers will be able to carry on. We've got these questions that you see that we're all going to talk about, and we're going to break out into small groups to discuss based on how many attendees we'll have. We'll see how many groups we have. Each group will have somebody in there from BEC to take notes, so that we can report out on our conversation towards the end on the 4 questions. And right now we'll get ready to set up the breakup groups, and you'll be invited to click join. And again, if you had any general questions that you wanted the panelists to speak to, you can type those into the chat, and that way we can, you know, ask the panelists their questions for the general group. I didn't see any when I was checking, except for Tom. Fueling. Oh, we're recording. Fueling in the morning versus fueling in the evening is where we were getting the difference in our air pollution, air reduction. So thank you, Julia. I learned something, and that's really great. Caitlin, are we ready to break up into our breakout groups?
Well, we were, except my internet just got bogged down, and that's why that just reset. And now the rooms I created are they've disappeared. So it'll just take me about, oh gosh, just a few minutes. I'm so sorry. I was ready.
No problem.
Great timing.
No problem. Yeah. It's great.
Well, if
So
anyone
we'll-
does have questions, we can fill that time with questions.
I couldn't hear all of what Lacy said. I don't know if anyone else had the same issue, but I think we could maybe take a question or two for a panelist while we wait for the breakout rooms.
I had so many questions. I didn't write them all down.
I have a comment. Going back to the old mowing in the morning thing. It was interesting looking at air quality data. And this is going back to meteorology. I like to geek out on the data. So we're measuring ozone, and actually in Butte County, ozone is more of an issue in the foothills. Actually, Paradise has higher ozone values than Chico due to the transport of air pollutants. And it's interesting that you'll have this peak of ozone. You can see it's from the morning commute, and then it'll dip down a little bit sometimes, and then it'll peak again, and you can kind of tell that that's from the evening commute from metropolitan areas south of us. So it's kind of interesting how you can see the ozone creation happening. You know, it's a couple hour process, but you can kind of see waves of it coming through the Butte County area from activities that are occurring hundreds of miles away south of us.
Well, that's good to know. Awesome.
Wow. All right. It looks like we're ready for our breakout room. So if you see a pop-up in front of you to invite you to join a room, you can hit join now.
See you on the breakouts.
Yay. I'm going to be your note taker, Jason, and we'll have some more folks jump in with us. You can't hear me?
Hey folks, there's just 3 of you still in this main session. If you're on the other side, you should see a button that is inviting you to join a room. We have some groups to continue the conversation in our small breakout sessions. Chris, Gregory, and Kit and Bill.
interesting to share.
I didn't push
well-
that, did I?
Well, I think Caitlin just popped in here, so maybe she's spying on us. Just kidding.
That's
Hi,
me.
Caitlin.
Super cute.
I have one thought is like I'm a transportation planner for work, and living near a freeway can lead to you getting a lot of vehicle-based pollution, and that's a big equity issue in California. So there's there are studies that I should read again so that I actually remember what the impacts were on human health. But you know, the things that Lacy discussed, as in higher rates of diseases, things like that. So that's unfortunate. And I like that Ashley talked about the climate change angle, that, you know, the same things that are putting pollutants into people's lungs are also causing climate change. So that's a big intersection there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
that's,
think
go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say that that last slide that I had, you know, I think people forget that, you know, they think emissions and they have like tunnel vision. They just think emissions, they go away, but they don't, you know, they impact our communities every day. So when we opt for solutions that reduce emissions, it also reduces emissions, which means it's going to reduce the air quality concerns that we have in our area. So I think people forget that sometimes. And so it's really great to remind people, you know, riding your bike is good for your health physically, but it's also good for the health of the planet. And I like to try to bring that full circle whenever I can.
It's also a great argument when you're talking to people who are like, well, I don't believe in climate change, or I'll be gone before then. Like, why do I need to do things like energy efficiency and sustainable transportation? You can remind them, well, you can also make sure that your community isn't breathing in bad stuff.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah, I like the, you know, a lot of the incentives that are going on statewide are certainly of value, because when you invest in cleaner technology, you know, it's almost like, you know, there's so many spokes coming at the wheel, you know, like a transportation project, you know, changing out old diesel to, let's say, new electric. Not only is it better for criteria emissions like smog and particulates, you reduce toxic air emissions, so the diesel particulate matter, which is a toxic, it's a carcinogen. Also, the greenhouse gases. Also, a lot of these are more, they're just going to save these folks money. You know, newer technology, it's an investment, and you know, if you go electric for a certain amount of time, you're gonna cross that break-even point, and you're going to be spending less resources on fuel costs. So it's, you know, investing in cleaner technology, it helps, you know, the reduction in greenhouse gases, air pollution that's harmful for human health, harmful to the environment, and it saves money.
Yeah, absolutely. Transportation is one of those, we always talk about the three bubbles. So, you know, environment, social, economic. And so we always talk about those at work, and transportation is a really great way of tackling all three of those things at once, you know, making sure, you know, you save money by switching to a more efficient or electric vehicle. And you also are able to reduce your impact, and it's better for everyone if you're doing that. So another great thing, I feel like a lot of air quality related projects have those three things that you know, a lot of the time it saves you money, which is a great thing to remind people that, to Bryce's point, are like, I don't care about emissions. It's like, well, do you want to save money? Like, come on, it's easy. So
Great points, Chris. I love your cat.
it's so cute.
Lacy has been having like the same thing when on Zoom meetings.
She's not allowed on the table, but I'm letting her.
Good kitty. I was looking at the prompt and thinking, like, maybe if anybody knows more about water impacts from air quality, that's something I'd be interested in learning more. Or if anyone has more thoughts on what we're already discussing, that's good too.
I don't have information about it, but was it Lacy who talked about, you know, and had that graphic of air pollution affecting waterways, and doesn't it cause acidification? I'm sorry, I am not the person who could be answering, but it certainly affects water.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Right, yeah, certain types of pollutants, especially near heavier industry, there's certainly acidification, lead, sulfur, and other pollutants that could be concerned, or in heavy metals as well, dioxins, that can be concerned, with some of the heavier industry, especially the really big guys that are out like in the East Coast and in Europe.
Yeah, and small bodies of water can start to anaerobically digest, and that will create methane emissions. So that's another thing to think about. That methane is the big one. So it's something that we should look to reduce. And so small bodies of water evaporate and create those environments that then lead to methane emissions.
And this is going back to the first question about regional air quality. If you live in the Owens River, if you live in Owens, near Owens Lake, near Lone Pine, or if you live near the Salton Sea, that's a really big nexus between water, drought, absence of water, poor water management, and then the resulting poor air quality due to dust storms and other impacts like that. So some regions, water management impacts the air quality because of dust or because of the settlement of heavy metals, the situation with the Salton Sea.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah, dust is another big thing. Like at our house, we have like tons of dust. But yeah, I mean, water is really important to reducing dust, and another one of those things that directly impact air quality that I don't think about often. But yeah, dust is huge.
I have a question, if I may, since Ashley's in this group. Speaking of anaerobic digestion, when you were giving your talk, you were talking about your anaerobic digesters, I believe. Mm-hmm. But there was but the graphic was of an open water tank, and so I was trying. It felt like a disconnect. Are those actually promoting anaerobic digestion?
It's part of the process in treating the water. And I believe that the anaerobic digesting is happening in closed tanks. So it's another piece of that overall puzzle. And so those tanks are settling tanks, I believe. So we want the system materials. And so there's a whole big building. There's a lot of different moving parts to make that happen. But yeah, where all because the wastewater treatment center uses anaerobic digestion to process all the materials. And so we've got some water that has more solids and some water has less solids. So we're capturing most of the gas. Obviously, we're not going to be able to capture everything, but where the most emissions are happening, we're able to capture that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for clarifying.
But you're right, that is kind of like counterintuitive that those open tanks are there. So thank you. It's a good thing to point out.
Good question. I was going to point us to, Caitlin pasted in the chat the prompt questions, and we can kind of go at our own pace, but I wanted to point out that something I'm curious about is the question, which strategy is more effective for driving change? Do we push for stricter enforcement, change in regulation, additional regulation, focus more on social norms? Sorry, I'm probably reading this a little bit backwards. But basically, I think that would be a good way for all of us to discuss how to get to clean.
I see that. I've seen that in Citrus Heights. Over.
I actually have never heard of that here, but I will say I know exactly what you're talking about. My partner and I moved here from San Luis Obispo County and hadn't seen a drive-through in 10 years because of the anti-idling law. But I am personally not aware of anything in Butte County, so I'd love to hear if others are aware.
I mean, it might be a stretch for like abolishing drive-throughs. I don't think that's politically feasible.
That's a dramatic example, but
yeah, I think of like delivery trucks. You know what I mean? Downtown, always in the mornings, there's always a bunch of delivery trucks just sitting there with their engines running. So, I mean, some of that might have to do with the cold. Like, it's important to keep the engine warm for efficiency, but I don't know much about it. Over.
Being local to the area, I've heard that Esplanade through those lights near Chico High. I know you have to go to the speed limit or you're gonna hit a red light. So maybe, but I'm not aware about any of that.
That's interesting.
I think that's a good example of the intersection between like cultural norms and the role of local government, especially in establishing cultural norms, just through like public education campaigns, like a sign on the Esplanade saying the lights are timed for this, like I think would be beneficial. And then you can also reinforce the idea that we want better air quality. It's like, it's better because you burn you burn fuel more efficiently when you don't stop and start all the time. And it's good for air quality. And, it's good for public safety as far as like road safety. I think there is a role for like reinforcing social norms through public education campaigns like that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna go to our next question here, and please, if anyone wants to talk about anything else air related, feel free to do so. We're all open ears. The last question here is, what do you think defines sustainable air quality?
I think that's always a interesting like question when you think of like, is any like air emissions, is any greenhouse gas emission a good thing, right? Like, how do we want to make sure that we're releasing a sustainable amount of greenhouse gas emissions? So just kind of using that as a starting off point. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Well, I mean, we could have some emissions if we could capture it in some way. So sustainable might be as much as we put out, we're also, as much as we're releasing, we're also taking back in.
Yeah, that's a great example. Any other thoughts on what do you think sustainable air quality means? Or what would it mean to you?
I think like I don't know like the feasibility of it, but I'm thinking like staggering permitting. Like I think Jason said that agricultural burns have to be permitted. And I was thinking even just staggering them so they're, it's not everybody burning on the same day, things like that. I mean, that's, again, I think Juliet posed a really important question, like, what is a sustainable amount of toxins in your air? It's really kind of a moot point, but I do think, steps can be taken to improve air quality.
That's true. This was one of those questions we were head scratching at when we wrote it. Like, oh, we don't even know what we really think is sustainable air quality. So I wonder what other people will think. But I think we got some good stuff going here. I mean, Go ahead.
So we could also add, not having an equitable distribution of bad air quality. Because I don't know, air quality could be good or it could be bad. But if we're talking about just having a more equitable distribution of the pollutants, so it's not all focused in one area.
Definitely. Any additional thoughts on what you think sustainable air quality means?
I guess maybe I'm thinking about it from a slightly different perspective. Maybe instead of like pollution out and capturing it, maybe it means the air quality is good enough that we can be healthy and go outside and not, it's like sustainable for us to live in, and you know, not get sick or not have those hazardous health days. And anyway, it's the same point, I guess, but just a different perspective, I guess.
Well, but I think saying it in that way, at least for me, is really important to know that, you know, that's what almost makes it a sad kind of silly of feeling like you have to say, if we were able to have good enough air quality that we would be healthy, that we wouldn't get sick, that we wouldn't have these kinds of days. That's almost what's funny about this kind of question, is it's, you know, some of us are at a loss for why we're even in that scenario in the first place. So I really like your verbiage in that. I'm gonna check our time.
7:40.
Okay. I think that's about when we're gonna start coming back, but I will keep taking all of your thoughts until we leave. Does anyone have any looming air quality thoughts that you would like to share with the group?
I had a question. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
No, please.
I just had a question regarding that. What defines sustainable air quality in regards to city, county, state? Like, how is that measured? You know, it's a good question where it could be good air quality in Chico, but I believe, was it you, Lacy, or somebody else said, you know, in Paradise, it's not it's got higher AQI. So how is it measured to be sustainable air quality?
No, that's a good point. It's one of those it depends scenarios almost. Like, you know, if we're choosing to have what we want as our sustainable air quality here, if we already know that weather and different natural systems impact that air quality, then how do we know if it's going to work somewhere else? How do we know if having it good here is going to keep it good elsewhere or make it worse?
What's really interesting, that just reminded me, Christian, that I have a question to ask at some point is an issue that we come up with in Forest Ranch. Where I live, I'm about 3,500 feet, but it's only, you know, a 20-minute drive down into the valley to Chico. But we are beholden to Butte County's air quality standards. So when there's a certain measurement of the AQI for the day, we can't burn up there and do like our wildfire prep because the air quality down here is poor. And when I drive this commute to Chico every single day, unfortunately, I'm waiting to be able to get my all-electric vehicle still. The air is, I mean, the air quality is visible, especially at this time of year when we have the inversions in the valley. And I can see what I'm about to drive down into and have to breathe in all day. It's actually really depressing. So we have this issue in Forest Ranch there where we can't do certain activities, even though the air quality up there isn't poor. And to me, it makes sense because what we're doing up there does come and settle into the valley when we have these inversions. But, you know, is there more of a site-by-site operation to kind of find that balance is I guess kind of the question that I have. You know, like you mentioned Paradise, but that's just the reality for us up there in Forest Ranch. Our air quality can be great in the wintertime because it's all, you know, settled down in the valley, or versus, you know, in the summertime, it can actually be really bad up there when it's not so bad down here, depending on where the wildfires are. So anyway, thanks for triggering that memory. I forgot that I was going to ask that tonight. All right, I'll close the rooms.
I was about to ask that. Thanks, Caitlin. Great discussion, everybody. Thanks for pitching in.
Sorry, y'all. Surprise. We all got wrapped up with our conversations, and it's about that time, 7:43. We're gonna have our note takers report out on what we discussed in our breakout groups. And we were right in the middle of hearing Ashley talk about something in our breakout group. So I'm trying to summarize what she was saying. There we go. All right. So am I right that we had 2 groups?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I will, well, Bryce, you or me, we'll take the group 1 and talk about what we talked about.
Oh, I thought you took over taking notes.
I did. Okay,
Good luck,
perfect.
Becky.
Thanks. So in our group, we had Jason and Ashley, and the questions were great. And we had the 4 prompts, of course. We didn't stick to them exactly, but I thought some of the interesting topics that we covered were what happened during the campfire. We all were here, and we know that the air quality index was way beyond hazardous. It was literally off the scale. They didn't even have a color for how toxic our air was. And something of note that we can all research later is that the Air Resource Board brought out a report, the Campfire Air Report, comparing air quality during campfire, car fire, and the Mariposa County fire. The campfire had a lot of homes burned, so there was buildings, vehicles, plastic appliances, and the car fire had fewer homes and more vegetation, and then the Mariposa County fire was mostly vegetation, so it was really interesting to see the difference in air pollution over those 3 different burn profiles. How does air quality affect people, water, and climate? We really got into water effects. I took a lot of notes on water pollution from industry, dioxins, lead, sulfur, the acidification of waterways. And then something else that was brought up was that even small bodies of water will can naturally go to an anaerobic process when they're drying up, and that can lead to methane emissions. So water pollution was an impact from air pollution, but also water can lead to air pollution. I thought that was interesting. The other prompt was, what strategy is more effective with driving change in social norms? Do we want to do the carrot or the stick approach? And I think that everybody in our group kind of came to the consensus that both. We should do incentives, and we should also do enforcement and crack down on those that aren't getting with the program. And I think the last thing we were talking about is, what defines a sustainable air quality in each of our minds. And we had some discussion about, instead of highways, to seeing more investment in infrastructure for biking and non-polluting transportation, walking and biking, because a lot of the times you'll see these bike paths are put right next to highways, and you're getting just all this exhaust and noise, and that's supposed to encourage you to bike. So it'd be great to see more transportation infrastructure for biking. And then I'll wrap up with one of the last things that we were talking about was that Jason mentioned, and I thought it was really good food for thought, is we're all part of our society and we're all part of our economy, and air pollution, you think it's industry, those polluters need to be regulated. We need to have cleaner industry. But if you think holistically, we're all buying into that. So where do you impact air? It's not just the car you drive, but it also might be the products you buy, the energy you buy. We were looking at, for example, the port of LA, and it's just, LA is known for its smog, but all those ports are offloading container ships full of products that are going to wind up in a store near you. And are you buying them? Then maybe you're a piece of that air pollution as well. So I thought that was a really interesting thing, like a food for thought for me. And yeah, in our last thing that we got interrupted on was actually talking about, clean air for biking, but also thinking about forest management and making sure that we have a healthy, surrounds for our county. And we're thinking about ways to maybe help with our forest fires with prescribed and controlled burns, and making that so that we're able to help with our future. I think I covered everything. Let me know if I missed anything, you guys. All right, Lacy.
Great, thanks, Becky.
Thank you, Bryce.
That was awesome. So I was in the group as well as Juliet, and we kind of stuck to the questions, but branched it out pretty broad, I would say. When we were talking about the air quality impacts across the local, regional, and global scales, one person had said that in recent years, they have gotten into the habit of checking the air quality before they choose what to do and where to do it. And that when there are burn days or ag burns, you can definitely tell when you're outside or if you have your car window down. And then talking about differences between, well, differences across scales. One example on the global scale was that we had someone who lived in South Korea, and the poor air quality from China would affect the air in South Korea. And then also another example of Mexico City has poor air quality, but there's also poor air circulation in that area. So we were touching on how, you know, just kind of how you had said, even when we're in Butte County, that air quality can vary across even just one little spot on the map. And when we were speaking about how does air quality affect the people, water, and climate, and where do they intersect, we had an example where they're talking about building a natural gas pipeline, and that when construction takes place, they of course try and prevent as many emissions as possible from getting out. And then also that there are kind of erratic springs in pollen levels, and a question on whether or not that was considered pollution, and technically that is particulate matter, so yes. Also talking about which strategy is more effective between driving change in social norms or pushing for stricter regulations. We came to the kind of overall consensus that individual people generally would like to do better. If it is a large company or something like that, it goes into, does profit stump doing what is right? And so there's a role for regulations in that kind of larger scope. And that when you're looking at the individual or community level, those social norms really are kind of the place to go. And like you had said, the carrots instead of the stick. Also, more education. A lot of people would really want to change their social norms, most likely, if they knew how much impact that they as an individual had. And then also a good example was someone had asked if we have anti-idle laws here. We spoke about different areas where that is more apparent, and talking about how that is a good example of establishing those cultural norms and providing visibility if there is an area that says, you know, this light stopped because you're going this speed or whatever, or vice versa, I think. But anyways, just those little reinforcements of those social norms are possible in examples like that. And then with the last question, when we were talking about defining sustainable air quality, we got to the point of, you know, is any greenhouse gas emission a good thing? How do we make sure it's a sustainable emission? And that got us into talking about release and capture. And then someone brought up that it would be great to do more work on staggering burns in the area, so everyone is not burning on the same day when we're anxiously awaiting for one of those days. Wanting to make sure that we don't have inequitable distribution of air quality and prevent the focus from being in one area. That sustainable air quality would be good enough that we can be healthy, not get sick, and not have hazardous health days. And one close to home example, Caitlin had brought up that in Forest Ranch, they can't burn on some days because the AQI in Chico is poor. If she was driving down the ridge, she could see that the smog is visible, but it makes sense because what happens up there does come into the valley when there are inversions. but brought up the broad question that I'll end with of how do you find a site-by-site balance? That was all from us.
Very nice.
Great
Great.
discussions.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Really great. And it's interesting to see where things overlap and then and then totally veer off from breakout room to breakout room. All right. So we are now at 7:54. I want to tell you all great work. Thank you very much for participating and coming to listen to our panelists. Thank you again to our wonderful speakers, Jason Manley, Ashley Kohler, Lacy Moore, and Juliet Liu. I wanted to let you know about a few events we have coming up. So I think there's a slide for that, Caitlin. Butte Environmental Council and the Environmental Coalition of Butte County will be holding the annual environmental community gathering. So this is a chance to come and get involved with local environmental groups to find out what everybody's doing. Just like tonight at the forum, we learned so much about what Jason's working on, what Ashley's working on, what Beck is working on, and what Lacy had told us so much about her expertise on air pollution. This ECBC will be an opportunity to see what our local environmental groups are doing. So I invite you to come to that. There will be appetizers, drinks, and we get to socialize with like-minded folks, get more into these discussions, and see some impacts in our community. Also, Butte Environmental Council will be holding a very big event this year. Instead of the Endangered Species Fair, which is a 43-year running event, this year we will be holding the Endangered Earth event the day after Earth Day, April 23rd in downtown Chico. It's going to be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. We'll have a walk for Earth. It's a procession at 10:30 in the morning, and we're going to go through downtown Chico to the city plaza. There will be guest speakers, music, exhibits, food. So that's again going to be in April, and I'd love to see everybody there. And if you'd like to become a Butte Environmental Council member, our programming depends on our members. And if you want to participate in BEC events, if you'd like to join one of our committees is the Outreach and Education Forum, which puts on Outreach Education Committee, which puts on forums like this. Please visit becnet.org. Again, that concludes the first community forum of 2022. I hope you had a great time and that you'll join us again in the future. And we look forward to that. So thanks again, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for all of you for joining us out there too, or viewing later after I download this and upload it to YouTube. So stay tuned.